The Sandy and Toddcast is a Mindgarden Media podcast in association with
Screw You, Todd
Productions. Well, here we go again. Time for more questions and answers from the Weirdos.
Q&A with S&T. I love that. We're having a blast.
We really are. And I've had a lot of good comments about the season too. So we'll do this as long as the questions are coming in, I guess.
As long as you guys are interested and keep sending us questions, we're here for you for your entertainment purposes.
Right? Season 7, episode 4, Q&A with S&T continues next on the Sandy and Toddcast.
I'm Vicki Hackbarth, owner of Chakra Awakening, LLC. I'm a certified Reiki master providing services which include past life karma clearing. Karma from your past lives affect you today. Karma is the memory of our souls, which often stem from prior lives. What we didn't finish then, we come back to finish now. Unpleasant situations are the consequence of lingering karma, which can be reversed and resolved. I can help you clear the past life karma carried over from former lifetimes. For more information, find me on Facebook at Chakra Awakening, LLC.
Broadcasting from two very different yet magical places not found on any map. Get ready to discuss the strange, weird, ghostly, crazy, spooky, and odd things that take place around us each and every day. All while having a little bit of fun. This is the Sandy and Toddcast.
Welcome again to the Sandy and Toddcast. She is Sandy.
He is Todd.
And we are here with another episode of Q&A with S&T.
So much fun. So much fun. And no video this week, but we had such a great response to the video that we did last week. We're actually thinking about doing many more videos.
Yeah, like maybe every other week or every third week or something like that. Today was just a day I didn't feel like getting ready for the video.
Which is funny because last week was mine. I was like, do you really want me to have to do something with myself today? But I think it was a good idea. And so next week we may actually end up with a video. We don't know. But keep checking our YouTube channel for the videos. And they're fun to make. I mean, they're not taking away from anything else that we do. We're recording anyways. But I think people really like the idea of being able to see our beautiful faces and our expressions. How we play off of each other.
Yes to that, for sure.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. So we'll probably be doing more. I think it's a lot easier for us than live casts. So it just sort of makes it...
It's just a time thing for me because after a full day of work and then you do a live cast, which, is fun, but there's preparation for it and then you're not wrapping up until it's late and then you're wound up from the broadcast and then you kind of... I was always one to watch it then after to see because when you're in it, sometimes you don't necessarily...
You miss things.
Exactly.
So I'd be laying in bed and Dave'd be like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm watching the live cast. He'd say, well, didn't you just do that? And I said, yes, but it's different.
But he should know that being in radio, a lot of times you walk away from a broadcast, you don't remember anything that came out of your mouth, really.
Not at all. There was a lot of times when I would do interviews on the air and stuff that I'd go back and listen to my interviews after the fact to make sure that I didn't sound like a complete moron.
Right.
Or they didn't say something that I probably should have moved them in a different direction, that kind of stuff. So, yeah, the live casts are a ball, but you're right, because what happens after every live cast that we do? We stay on for at least another hour and a half, BSing, and then it's like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night.
Yep.
And we're exhausted.
Yep.
So, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And this way everybody gets to see our beautiful faces, but it doesn't have that kind of an effect on us. So that's good. I like it. I love the idea.
We've got more questions and stuff. And I think because we have, at least I have, to one of the questions, I have something that I want to kind of throw in as an experience In watching a show last night, there's a little bit more that I want to be able to spend on that particular question. So I say we get into the questions this week.
Let's do it.
And then we can, bullshit along the way.
So there's 3 questions we're going to go with this week. And please forgive me. Some of them have taken a while because I've been trying to either lump them kind of together with maybe a theme.
Sure.
Or kind of do a little thinking about them before I just talk and make no sense whatsoever.
And this is so unfair because I really, other than the one question I think that might be there this week that I can tie into, I never know. So it's just kind of thrown at me and I just go with it.
Well, it's much more fun that way. It's much more fun that way for me. So, all right, here we go. First question. And this is great. This is from Lisa. She says, do you think if you watch lots of ghost shows, etc., that you could open yourself up or attract something to you or your home? You want to take that first?
I will, because that is the question that kind of ties into something I was watching last night. I was watching Kindred Spirits, which is a show we talk about a lot on our podcast, and it's something that we enjoy. And I'm not going to give too much away by saying this, but
yeah, because I haven't watched that episode yet.
It was a good episode last night. And actually, what happened was not necessarily something that happened in the episode, but during the episodes when they air on Discovery, Adam and Amy and Chip always live tweet. So when something happens, they'll tweet, "Hey, this happened, but here's something that maybe you don't see or whatever."
Right.
And Chip does it a lot, where he's like, "I can't," because a lot of these guys, you have to understand this. While they were there, and while they were there for the filming, they don't get to see the final product till it airs.
Right.
So when Chip Coffee, says something on Twitter about the show, he's seeing it for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like that shared with these people. It's just like, you and I were part of experiences with some videos and stuff like that, TV shows. I never knew what it was really going to look like until it was done.
And that was what I was going to say is we've both done shows, and when you're in the middle of something, it's completely different than what it ends up being. And not that it's fake, but editing is a huge part of what goes into the final product of a show. And so what you think it may end up looking like or what your experience was while taping it could actually be completely different. It could get Frankenstein together into a completely different direction, a completely different story than what you think it's going to be. So that makes sense.
Well, and also, think about this. Sometimes during the editing, they hear stuff or see stuff that you don't see while you're there.
Right.
So all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, right?
Yep, exactly.
So anyway, during the show, they're live tweeting, and somebody tweeted, and I'm going to paraphrase this because I wasn't able to pull it up on Twitter quickly enough, that basically saying, folks, listen, if you watch these types of shows,
I'm laughing already.
The spirits could come through the electronic equipment into your life and screw you up. Basically saying that by watching these shows, you're allowing those energies that are being portrayed on TV to come to you.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll quickly say, and then I'll give my piece. Adam Berry basically said, this is crap. People saying this kind of stuff are trying to rule your mind and your belief system.
Mm-hmm.
So you and I had a brief discussion about this morning.
All right.
But my thought process is this. By watching these shows, it's not going to necessarily increase activity around you. Things are not going to come to you because you're watching ghost shows.
Right.
However, I think by watching these shows, especially ones that have some merit to them and some truth about them, I think it does allow you to understand the process of what goes on. And it may make you a little bit more available to witness those things. I think it may not necessarily, I'm not talking about spiritually opening you up. I think it can open your mind to what's really going on around you. It's like spending a day out in nature and going, oh my God, I see the trees. I smell the air. I hear the birds. Okay.
Right.
When you're not in it, when you're not partaking in that, you're dealing with the traffic on the street. You're dealing with the stress at work. That's your life. And sometimes you forget about it. So I don't think nothing's going to come to you because you watch the shows.
Right.
But it may allow you to be more perceptive to things that are going on around you, which then it would allow you to experience more things. So that's my take on it.
150% agree with you on that. And one thing that I would like to add to that is that we talked about this as well, that my fear is not that anything will attach to you from the show per se, but my biggest fear, and when people come to me, and people have come to me and asked me about beginning to investigate, when they come to me because they are so interested in what they see on television and they want to start doing that. And I say to them, just by watching a show, it doesn't give you the experience to be able to handle what you could come across. And I think in that respect, it does open you up for the possibility of experiencing things that you're not prepared for.
Yes.
Without a doubt. Just because it looks quote unquote easy on TV
or cool
does not mean that everybody is cut out for it, that everybody can handle it. Case in point, I was investigating a couple of years ago at an old church, and there was a young girl on the team, not on my team at the time, but on the team that my team was investigating with. And she was young and inexperienced and truly not ready for what she experienced that evening. And she actually had a breakdown and was crying. She was hysterical, and she was a very sweet girl. Don't get me wrong, but she clearly was not ready for what she experienced that night. And regardless of whether she saw it on television or not, my fear is that people are not ready for what they do. The first thing I say to people when they come to me and ask me about learning how to investigate or starting to investigate is I say, number one, you have to make sure that you're protected and safe. Okay. And number two, don't do it alone. Never, ever do it alone, especially if you're just starting out. Take someone with you. I have a lot of people who say to me, can I come with you sometime? And I say, sure. And I say sure because I consider myself to be a pretty experienced investigator at this point, regardless of the psychic medium abilities that I have. I'm someone who's very experienced with it. I've had a lot of experiences during investigations, and I have seen quite a bit and experienced quite a bit. I feel comfortable taking someone new with me. But if you're someone who's sitting at home and you're watching these shows on TV, especially these shows that are kind of iffy, and we all know which ones we're talking about here, and that inspires you to go out and start investigating, to buy equipment and start investigating, I think that you need to really think about it first and reach out to people who have experience and talk to them about it. And that's where it loops back to the question, which was an excellent, excellent question, because no, I don't think that anything can attach itself to you from watching television. If that was the case, Poltergeist and The Exorcist,
vampires
and werewolves and all of this great stuff, but that's not what happens. But it is you opening yourself up to situations that you may not be ready for in that case. Or, again, opening your mind up to things that enable you to maybe experience things more.
I always also tell people, like, if you're going to investigate, do it with somebody else.
Without a doubt.
For safety reasons.
Right.
And especially somebody who's done it before and can, because the first time something major happens to you, for some people, it takes forever for that to happen.
Right.
I mean, it was years before something happened where it made me tear up a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if, you need somebody there and honest to God, first of all, to give you some credibility if something does happen, there's another person there experiencing it.
Right.
But also just to have somebody there to physically, emotionally, spiritually help you through what could come through. And I know you said a lot of that kind of stuff, but I just remember all my first aha moments, the first growl in thin air, the first voice I heard speaking in thin air, some of the stuff I've caught on EVP. I mean, while it doesn't scare me now, there is some stuff where you're like, oh my God.
Oh yeah. Oh, Todd. And you know what? Here's another thing too that I should mention is a lot of kids, like teenagers, really want to want to learn about it. And I personally think that's great. My friend Karen, I took her son Ace with me. Ace wanted to experience something. So I took him to the Oriskany battlefield with me one evening. And a really sweet woman that I know, she asked me, her daughter's turning 14 and asked me about maybe taking her on an investigation. I will not take teenagers on an investigation with me. However, what I will do is I will take them to a place that I have actually myself been to before, that I know what the energy is like, that I know what to expect, that I know that it's very easy and simple. It's not going to be a bad experience for them. And I will take them to that place. And I will let them experience it. I will let them use the equipment. And I will let them get a feel for the place. It's not just about equipment. It's about letting them open themselves to understanding what's going on and feeling things. Mm-hmm. But it's only in a safe place that I've been to before, and I know what to expect. And even if it's an adult, I've taken adults places before, but I've taken them to places that I know what to expect.
Right.
I would never, especially like you said, for safety reasons, ever take somebody to a place that I myself have never been to before, and I don't know what to expect.
I just think of these, again, shows with some credibility. I'm not saying that everything is 100% with these shows, but a show that has some credibility is like getting an education on any topic in the world. It just opens your mind up and allows you to think a little bit differently than you did before.
Right. And I think that that's where these shows do such a wonderful job in letting people, and history is so huge with me. I mean, let's face it, the paranormal and history go hand in hand. If you don't have one, then you probably don't have the other. And so it's so important to educate people. And that's why I love taking people with me. People want to go with me. Well, sure, you're more than welcome to. I mean, I'm not going to take somebody who's never investigated before on a full-fledged investigation. That would be ridiculous. Because not only would I feel responsible for them, but I want them to have their first experience as something that makes them happy and excited and fulfilled and like, oh my gosh, wow, maybe I do want to look into this, or I didn't like this. This was boring, so maybe I don't want to do it. My thing is I want to educate them before I just let them go off into doing something. And that includes protection as well. I never let anybody do anything without taking protection with them. End of story. And I think that's super important as well. So that was an amazing question. So to sum it up, no, not at all. Nothing's going to attach to you by watching it through TV or listening to a podcast, which, I listen to all these, demon stories, and I was exorcised and all this kind of stuff. Podcasts, but no, that won't happen. It's just a matter of people who aren't ready or knowledgeable trying to do this stuff on their own because of the cool stuff that they see on TV.
Yeah.
So, excellent question. Excellent. So, Christy had a fun one, Todd. And she said, this is more of a fun type question. Why are vampires, and I love the fact that vampires are included because we know how you feel about vampires. Why are vampires and werewolves historical enemies? I've tried looking into it myself, thinking it was just a Hollywood thing, but found it mentioned often. I even found in my research that vampires don't believe in werewolves and vice versa. So it just kind of makes me giggle. I thought that was great. Did you know they were enemies? Like, I didn't know enough about it to know that they are enemies, not just in pictures, but apparently in a lot of folklore as well.
I guess I wasn't aware of it. And I have never seen the Twilight movies. I have no idea about it. I know there's a vampire and I know there's a werewolf. And of course you did.
I did.
And I know that they don't get along. However, I did watch a TV show that really wasn't that bad. It was called, there was an English version of it, a British version, and then an American version of it. And basically in the house, there was a dead person. Mm-hmm. There was a werewolf. And there was a vampire. And the vampire and the werewolf were not supposed to get along, but these three people found themselves together because they were outcasts. So in the story, there was, they're vampire people all over the place, and he didn't want to be a vampire. There was a werewolf who didn't want to be a werewolf, and then there was somebody who was dead who was trying to figure out, what I died kind of thing. So, I've known that, but I guess I didn't realize the lore involved. I don't know how I feel. So I could, here's the thing. I don't have an answer to that because I don't know enough about the past. Maybe you've done some research, but I could share a very personal story about this with you.
Yes, please.
It's my favorite story. I don't even know if my family knows this story, but there are people in my life that do. So when I was younger, probably in my early 20s, I had a series of very, 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 very vivid dreams in my life. Uh-huh. And I was living at my parents' house. I believe my sisters were still living there in my dream. And in the early dreams, vampire shit was going on. And one of the first things I remember was having a big meeting at the high school where they basically said, we're having issues with vampires. Like, this is going on. You need to all protect yourselves. You need to get home as soon as possible. Lock your doors, all this kind of stuff.
All right.
So I was riding, my friend was taking me home, my friend Leah, and we were driving, and I remember exactly where we were driving. And as we were driving, this hand with huge nails on it came down and scratched on, like from above the car, came down and scratched along the windshield. We're like, we're getting home, whatever. And she finally drops me off at home, and I run in the house, and I'm like, we got to lock all the doors because the vampires are coming. And everyone in my family looked at me, had no color in their eyes. Their eyes were gray. And they basically said, you need to protect yourself. They all walked out of the house, down the yard, and into the cornfield, and were gone. Okay. So that was the end. Like, this dream went on forever. Like, I was having these dreams for like months and months.
Right.
So they walk into the cornfield, skies get cloudy, wind kicks up, all that kind of stuff. And I'm thinking, how am I going to protect myself from the head vampire? Because apparently there was a head vampire in this little town in Wisconsin. This little rural town with, farmers and...
the king.
So at any rate, on my mom's wall growing up, there was always a cross, a little thin metal cross that hung on my mom's bedroom wall. And I had found out that was the cross that had been in my grandmother's coffin when she died, like for the funeral and stuff. They place like in the door when it's open, there's a little cross that sits there.
Right.
I didn't know that until, just a little while before this. Well, in my dream, there were 2 crosses. And I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make sense to me because there's only one. But in my dream, I used the crosses almost as knives. I pulled them off the wall. And when this thing came to get me, I used it to try and stab this thing. Because I thought a cross, I'll stab the spook. It'll be great.
Right.
Not long after that, my grandfather passed away. So I don't know if that was some sort of premonition or what. But so in my dreams, I didn't beat the vampire and I actually became one. And then for a series of a very long time, I had very vivid dreams about that in my life. And, it was pretty graphic for a long time. So and here's the other thing. I was like a great fucking vampire. You need me to fucking fly? I'm off the ground in the sky and I'm flying around. And I remember videos. I remember dreams where I would look in a mirror and I would have like just my fangs and the blood. I could see the blood from the people that I had killed. So it was crazy, right? Well, apparently I pissed off somebody because there was some sort of fight in the air and we're flying around trying to kill one another.
It's like a movie.
It is. But this went on for like a few years.
Oh, my God.
And in the final dream of this, I think I lost because I fell back to the earth while being in the air and I landed in my bed, which is where I woke up afterward. And I remember hearing the name Michael, which is my middle name, which is also the name I use like as my last name.
Right.
So at any rate, the odd thing about that is that ever since then, I can still fly, but really poorly. Like, I know this sounds silly, but like I can fly still, but I'm not good at it at all. I can barely get off the ground. If there are evil spooks after me in my dream, in the old days, I could fucking fly away in a heartbeat. Now I can barely get off the ground. Or if I'm trying to hide, I'm going to go hide up in a tree and I'm trying to get up there. Oh my God.
So wait, okay. I have a couple questions though. Number one, did you ever have dreams about it before your 20s?
Well, this was late in my teens into my 20s.
Okay. But before that, you didn't have anything.
Well, I mean, not like that. I mean, everybody has their dreams and stuff like that.
Right.
And
but nothing about vampires?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, here again, I mean, I've told this story a million times, but my mom loved to watch that shit while we were little, and scare the fuck out of us. So yes, I had vampire dreams, but never one that vivid.
So I knew about the last part of it with the crosses and stuff.
Yeah.
We've talked about that. I didn't know all of that. That's sort of like these, it's not even recurring dreams. It's like you're like moving on. Like
it's like a storyline. It's like a story. Yeah.
Through your dream.
And so there was a long time, and I still kind of believe that there is another version of me that is that.
That's like a piece to the puzzle that's wild, Todd. Like I didn't know that whole thing.
Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. So do you,
I don't know if I don't like werewolves though. I don't know that.
Watch now tonight. You're going to have a dream about a werewolf. So do you still have dreams like at all about like vampire? Because I knew you didn't really care for vampires. Like it kind of creeps you out a little bit.
A little bit, but there's also a romantic part of that. And when I mean romantic, I'm not talking about loving, but living forever, looking great. Everybody wants to be Lestat until they can't be Lestat anymore.
Did you have that beard in your dreams as a vampire?
No, I was young, so I had the long hair. I looked like a rock and roll guy, and that's what I was.
Do you have any pictures like that?
Yeah,
I would love to see those.
No, you're never going to see those.
I do have some when you were younger, but not like that.
No, I had long hair in school. I remember, we're getting off topic, but I remember walking down the hall at school and I had a teacher said to me, he was walking behind me, he goes, well, looks like somebody needs to get his ears lowered. And I turned around to him and I said, absolutely not. And I walked off. Like, fuck you. I had the best. I was voted best hair, I think, in high school.
Can we please have a picture?
No.
Come on. I think I've shared my picture
And the sad part about it was my mom made me get it cut. I was still longer for my graduation pictures.
Yeah, I've seen those.
But it was longer than that. And my mom made me get it cut. And then for a while it was dyed purple. And I mean,
get out.
I'm serious. Those were the days of Flock of Seagulls. You had to have that's a band, by the way, if you don't know.
Yeah. Which, again, we're getting off topic. We're going down the rabbit hole. But I didn't know this because you hear that song I ran so often, like it gets so much airplay because it's like everybody loves it. It's in it's a small rotation.
Yeah.
And you hear it so often. I always assumed it was like a number one song. It didn't even come close to hitting number one.
And they actually had another song that was actually much better. Something love song, and I don't know.
Oh, I think I know what song you mean too.
That's a great song, yeah.
Yeah, I used to love like in the 80s. I used to love like the English, like the UK music, like the techno. But it wasn't really. It was like it. It was so melodic, but it was techie. Where over here we were just saying the same words over and over again.
Yeah.
But over there they had such advanced music styles.
If you haven't seen the video, and I'm going to tell everybody to go watch it. If you haven't seen the video for Flock of Seagulls, I Ran So Far Away, you've got to, because it was so cheesy. There was a cool part. There was a cool part where they're kind of spinning around and there's mirrors behind them. But in order to do it, okay, you've got mirrors behind you. There's a camera in front of you. What are you going to see in the mirror behind you? You're going to see the camera that's in front of you, right?
Right.
So in order to kind of hide it, they took aluminum foil and think of a camera on a tripod. They took aluminum foil all the way around the tripod to try and hide it.
Oh my God.
It's just really freaking cheesy.
Now I have to go because
you have to.
I haven't seen that video in so many years.
Maybe we can put the YouTube link in our notes.
I'll put the link up in the group. I'll put the link up in the group. Make sure you join our group.
Okay.
And I'll put the link.
So maybe you've got some information about why vampires don't like.
I do.
Spooks.
Well, I did find something. Christy is super, super right. Like, it's hard to find a lot of good information about it, but I did have a few things. I'm going to read it to you guys. So the first thing I searched was, do werewolves and vampires get along? And one of the answers was, according to many modern vampire stories, the vampire and the werewolf are natural enemies. In some stories, it has to do with competition for prey. In some, the werewolves exist to protect humans from vampires. And in others, there is an ancient feud between the two factions that has continued through the centuries. And then I did another search, and vampires and werewolves are often portrayed as mortal enemies in literature because they represent opposing forces or ideologies. Vampires are often seen as immortal, elegant, and cultured creatures who use their powers for personal gain, while werewolves are usually depicted as wild, primal, and loyal creatures who use their powers for the greater good.
Oh,
I know. This creates a natural conflict between the two as they have different goals and values. Additionally, their powers and abilities also often oppose each other, with vampires being able to manipulate and control the minds of others, while werewolves are often portrayed as having greater physical strength and endurance. So I thought that was interesting.
Now I'm upset.
Although Christy kind of giggled at it, I thought it was an interesting question.
It is, and I actually learned something because I had no idea.
I know. I never even knew that they were enemies.
I would love to be a werewolf then. I would rather be,
Well, but if you think about your dreams, though, it said that they are elegant culture creatures, immortal, and that they manipulate and control the minds of others. And I just think back to the dream you told me about where your parents and your family, your sisters had gray eyes And
I almost think like they were already vampires, but
yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah.
So manipulating the mind. I know that's really crazy, Todd. Like I've had dreams like that, but not quite like that before. So that was interesting.
My friend driving me home was driving her AMC Concorde hatchback. I mean, I remember that. I remember the color. I remember sitting in school. I mean, it was just so vivid.
It's really interesting to me how vivid these dreams can be when you're in them. And how quickly you can lose the finite details of them. You can still remember the ideas of them, but a lot of times you quickly forget like the small details of them. But yours is really
in my memory shop, but I remember that like it was, real.
I know. That's pretty wild. Like I knew part of that, but I didn't know the whole story. So
now I just shared it with everybody. Damn it.
Very interesting, Todd. Now we all know that you're kind of a wacko. All right. Moving right along. Okay, the last question.
From the mouth of a wacko.
That's why we get along so well. So, to update everybody. So here's the deal. Now, before we get to the final question, let's just update everybody on what's going on. So Todd may not be able to make it out here this year, which I'm forcing him if I have to go there myself and kidnap him and bring him. Next year, he's coming out here. But we had already planned to come out there in September. But because American Airlines, well, the airline industry in general sucks, they changed all of our flights out there and only gave us a half hour between our landing in Chicago and our taking off to Appleton, Wisconsin. And if anybody has ever been in Chicago O'Hare, even the terminal, even if you're in the same terminal, it still takes you 15 to 20 minutes to get to the other one, because without a shadow of a doubt, that you're going to be at this gate and you're going to be taking off and connecting from the total opposite gate in the terminal. So it takes 20 minutes to get off the plane when you land. Then it takes another 20 minutes to get to your terminal to connect. There's no way that we would be able to connect. So I was having an anxiety attack. And Todd said, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we meet in Chicago instead? And so that looks like that's what we're going to do. So pretty excited about that, because even though we'll put off the plans we had for Wisconsin for this fall, now we can go check out some different places in Chicago that might be haunted and have some cool history, and we can experience some new stuff together as well. So everybody's pretty excited about this. We're really looking forward to it. So that'll be in September, and we'll take a lot of video and stuff like that. But I just want to update everybody on now we're going to be doing some stuff from Chicago. So if anybody has any recommendations, we definitely want to take them to Bachelor's Grove, because I've been wanting to get back to Bachelor's. You can go to, I can't remember what episode it was, but I did an entire talk on my experience in Bachelor's Grove a couple seasons ago when Dave and I visited, and I really want Todd to go to Bachelor's Grove. So it's, without a doubt, it's one of the most haunted cemeteries in the United States. So we're going to go visit there, and we're going to do a whole bunch of other things like maybe Navy Pier. But if anybody has any other suggestions, please send them to us and let us know where you think we should go visit. Anything haunted or not, give us some ideas. I absolutely love Chicago. I absolutely am in love with the city of Chicago. And I think it'll be a lot of fun. And guess where else we're going, Todd? Nuts on Clark. We're going to get our pictures taken at Nuts on Clark, Todd.
Let me just say this. I am not.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. I'm not going to Nuts on Clark.
Yes, you are. All right, let's get on with the third question for the day. Now, this is a question that came to me a long time ago at the beginning of the season, and I really wanted to put some thought into it because it was an excellent, excellent question. And I just didn't know what I thought at the time or have enough information to be able to do it and address it. And Todd, I'd like to know what your thoughts are after I give mine. So it says, it was anonymous. I got it in my messenger. This gentleman says, I didn't want to leave this question out in public because it's religious. Totally understand that. I am Catholic, and all my life I have heard of purgatory. I'm wondering if ghosts and purgatory are linked, or is it just a place souls are in and cannot leave from? So they're just trying to put 2 and 2 together and kind of figure out what is going on. So it's important. Well, the first thing to know is that I was born and raised Catholic. So as soon as I read Purgatory, I understood exactly what he was talking about. And right around the time I was about 15, I sort of started to question a lot. And I think a lot of teenagers start to question things in households that maybe aren't devout. I think when you're raised in a household that's very devout, it's a little bit more difficult for you to question things and wonder about things. But my family did follow a lot of the Catholic things. I remember going to church with my grandfather every Sunday growing up. And I was confirmed. I was the whole 9 yards. But right around that time in my life, I started to question the actual church itself. And obviously now I know for good reason. But I sort of strayed a bit from the devout Catholic side of everything and sort of moved more like an independent in today's politics. And I consider myself today to be very spiritual. However, I do have some Catholic beliefs that I hold on to and I trust. I think the religion and the church are very much two separate things. So with that being said, I was kind of trying to get a basis of purgatory. And when you're a child learning about purgatory, it's sort of like being a child and wanting to climb a tree, and it's so difficult because it just seems so high. And then as an adult, you go and you visit that same tree and it's not as big as you think it is. It's sort of that perspective. So as a child, purgatory to me was this place where you'd go and you'd, be stuck there. And it was this void in between heaven and hell. And that was just what I thought it was. So the actual definition, I guess you could say, of purgatory. Purgatory is the condition, process, or place of purification or temporary punishment in which, according to medieval Christian and Roman Catholic belief, the souls of those who die in a state of grace are made ready for heaven. So in other words, in this belief, in this tradition, when you die, you don't necessarily go straight to heaven or straight to hell. In this belief system, if you are not a murderer or you don't commit any of the 10 deadly sins, the 10 commandments, but you did commit some, you go to purgatory. And that's where you have to suffer punishment for the sins that you have committed until your soul is clean. And then, excuse me, and then you can move on to heaven. So that's the whole idea of purgatory. And I thought that was so fascinating, Todd, because then it got me thinking about ghosts and purgatory. And is there a link there? It's kind of a cool rabbit hole to go down, because in this belief system, in the Catholic belief system or in any other belief system where you believe that something like that is possible, would that be the place where ghosts would exist? You're sort of in that in-between state, if you think about it. And that's what we sort of feel like spirits and energy kind of are. They're in that in-between space. I never, ever say that I'm crossing someone over because I don't believe that I am. I don't believe I'm ever sending someone to heaven. What I think I'm doing is I'm releasing someone from being bound or feeling that they're bound to a particular place. But is it possible? Is it possible that when we connect with spirit or energy, is it possible that that's where they're coming from? And maybe that's why we feel those emotions, because they haven't worked through those emotions yet. This is their place to work through those emotions. We don't know how long they're there, but apparently, according to the idea, they may be there as long as it takes for their souls to cleanse and be pure again. So I just thought that was fascinating. So I did look up a little bit about it, and I'll read to you guys what I found. And then maybe I'd like your kind of thought process on it, Todd, as someone who hasn't really looked into this as much. When it comes to the paranormal, the church walks a fine line. On the one hand, Catholicism is defined by a belief in the supernatural. One person of the Trinity was in the not too distant past commonly called the Holy Ghost. But church leaders also must battle against errant belief in the occult. The word ghost comes from Geist, the German word for spirit. A poltergeist or noisy ghost is a spirit that makes its presence known with acts of mischief, throwing toasters or dining room chairs around. Martin Luther was one of the earliest to use the term poltergeister. The modern Catholic dictionary defines ghost as a disembodied spirit. Christianity believes that God may and sometimes does permit a departed soul to appear in some visible form to people on earth. The definition continues. Their purpose may be to teach or warn or request some favor for the living. So I did think that was very interesting that the Catholic Church, which is something that I did not know, actually, and I do know that the Catholic Church does grant exorcisms, etc., on rare occasions. It's a very secret hush-hush thing. Every single diocese has an exorcist. Every single Catholic diocese has one priest, at least one priest, who is deemed able to do exorcisms. But I do think it's interesting that the Catholic religion actually kind of fosters this belief in spirits and ghosts and things like that. They just don't talk about it often. So I thought, is it possible that purgatory could be that place where that's where we're connecting with these spirits? It kind of sounds like it would make sense to me.
I think, and I speak from somebody who grew up in a Lutheran church situation, and for a portion of my life, I was pretty devout in Christianity. There was a portion of my life where I thought I was going to become a pastor. So what I'm about to say is not something that is just set off the cuff.
Right.
But, and I can't speak for Catholicism much other than what I've learned over the years. So I won't speak from that. But from the Christian church is full of paranormal stories, from the Holy Ghost to the Immaculate Conception to people walking on water, to turning loaves and fishes into what the Bible is full of paranormal stuff, burning bushes that talk, the tablets that came down from the mountain,
100%,
all sorts of stuff. The ark that carried the book is full of not normal stuff. And having said that, I'm not a believer in heaven or hell. And I'm a believer that, and again, it's okay if you believe that, though. Like, I just want to say, everybody needs to believe their belief system. They just don't need to push it on somebody else.
Agreed.
And if you take the religions of the world and you take the beliefs of the world, whether you're talking about Christianity or you're talking about Judaism or you're talking about Wicca, you take all of that. There are strings of similarities through it all, from holidays to prayers to all of it, you know?
Right. I agree.
So much is similar. If you actually took out the stuff, if you took the stuff that was similar and threw that in a book, it'd pretty much be the same book across all of them.
Agreed.
Right? Okay.
I totally agree with you. Yep.
So I'm not saying it's wrong, but my belief system is, what works for me is that there really isn't a heaven or hell. It's more of a state of being. So in other words, if you try to do good things, you're not necessarily going to go to heaven, but maybe if you do reincarnate, there's a step up. Maybe you've learned some lessons in time and you can then, level up, as they say, right? Leveling up.
Right.
So I don't know that I believe in purgatory. And I don't know that I think that energies are stuck there or anything like that. We may be in purgatory right now. Waking up every fucking day, going to work at jobs we fucking hate, right? And that may be hell. So I think that, the vision that we are given that heaven is up in the clouds and hell is somewhere down in the earth and purgatory is just somewhere off, Interstate 23, at some bad red truck stop gas station or something. Those are visualizations given to us to try and understand a bigger picture that our mind can't wrap around.
Right.
So I think it's an interesting question. And I think the thought process of purgatory seems to be something that might be kind of mystical to us and not understanding. But I think if you take a step back and you look at it and then put it into terms that you yourself can understand, you're great. That's all you can do in this life.
Well, I think to your point, I think it's all relative, right? I think it's all based on what your personal belief system is. And I think also, I just want to mention that all religions were essentially started by human beings walking the earth. All religions stem from that concept. So we're all different. And so what, one leader may have deemed as, this religion, as opposed to another leader, Martin Luther deemed it this way, but so-and-so deemed it that way. It's all relative. It's all relative because in the end, we don't know. We don't know anything. We don't know what is going on in our lifetimes as opposed to what is going on when our body expires. And I know it's so philosophical, but it really is philosophical because nobody knows for sure. But one thing I will say about that is that it's so important, and Dave and I have had this conversation several times. We'll sometimes go for a ride in the evening in the summertime, and we'll just have like these random philosophical, discussions about things. And I do think that no matter what religion or non-religion you are, no matter what you believe, that it is so, so, so important to have faith in something. To have faith in something in your life, because what your faith does, religious or not, what your faith does is it gives you hope. It gives you stability. It gives you something to believe in that's greater than yourself. It gives you an understanding that you're not alone. So I really feel like it is so important that everybody has faith in something in their lives. And that could be whatever form it is to you, but it's so important. They talk about the Catholic faith and this faith and that faith. I don't know if I necessarily live by the Catholic faith at this point in my life, but I do believe that there's something. I do believe that there's something higher. I do believe that there's something more than what we're experiencing right now in this very moment. And that gives me some faith. That makes me, especially Todd turns 53 on Monday. I turned 52 last week. We're not young. We're not ancient, but we're certainly not young. And I will admit, in the past couple of years, I've started thinking about death more. And neither one of us is the healthiest in the world. We are okay. We live day to day just fine, but we have our issues like anyone else. And so the idea that maybe there is more is what I have faith in. And so I think it gives you that stability, direction, that feeling of not being alone, that feeling of something that it's not so bad all the time. So I think this question was so excellent. And that's why it took me so long to look into it and think about it, because not only did it make me think about the question itself, but it made me want to express, like, a lot of what you said is 100% correct. And again, it's all relative. But I think if you don't have faith in something, that you're missing out on the whole point of it. The whole point of being who you are is to have faith in something in your life and believe in something in your life. Whether it's your friends, your family, your religious belief, what happens after you die, something to give you that stability and that feeling like, hey, I'm not alone in this world. So,
I have to tell this quick story.
Okay.
So, whenever Jehovah's Witnesses come to the door,
no.
and please, again, I'm not making fun of.
No,
they just have a very interesting way of outreach, and maybe there's nothing wrong with it, but
right.
I have a very hard time turning them away. Not because number one, I'm interested in knowing what they have to say. It's interesting. You actually learn some stuff.
Right.
And then secondly, that's just not who I am.
Right.
So sometimes you learn stuff because you're too afraid to turn people away. And I feel bad for them because they're in their mind, they're doing some good stuff.
Yes.
So I remember a number of years ago. Well, first of all, this happened just a couple of weeks ago. Somebody came to the door, and of course I fucking answered it. And there's there's an older gentleman and a younger gentleman, both in, suits and ties. And I thought, oh shit, here we go again. So they were talking, they send you a little pamphlet to read about how, things are bad in life. Right. And could we pray with you? Well, it was nasty outside. And I said, well, I'm going, and this is right about the time my father had passed away. So I said, actually, my family's going through some stuff. I would rather not. But instead of just leaving it there, I say, but if you come back again.
Oh no. Oh my God.
So for 4 weeks on a Saturday, there's a knock at the door and I don't answer it. But years ago, some had come to the door, and again, I'm interested in hearing what you have to say. So they're talking and stuff. And then at the end of it, they're walking away. And I think I said something like, have a great Easter. and then I didn't realize that they don't believe in Easter. There's something else that they believe in. So I thought I was doing the right thing. I wasn't trying to be an asshole. But it turns out, after reading a lot of the stuff that they gave me, they don't believe in that. So
well, here's the interesting thing. I think that, and not picking on Jehovah's Witnesses, but that's your story. I think that they, number one, obviously, they have a faith, and I think that's wonderful. They believe in certain things. Number two, I think they've received such a stigma over the years because they do believe differently than a lot of, a Lutheran and a Catholic and a Methodist, kind of in the grand scheme
there's some
of
stuff.
things,
yeah, there's some
have similarities, but where the Jehovah's Witnesses are sort of out there in left field. And I think they've received this horrible stigma over the years, and their methods are a little different. I mean, if you think about it, their methods aren't as, bad as some of the other ones, but so I think that they have a bad stigma, and there's so many jokes about not going to the door or screaming, horrible things at them, but they do have a faith. And I will say that I have known a lot of people who were raised as Jehovah's Witnesses, and who I always felt bad for them as adults because they never had birthday parties. They never really socialized as well with children outside of their own religion.
Mm-hmm.
They had such strict beliefs or non-beliefs in things that, I remember I had a friend who was raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and when he turned 18, he left the religion, and we threw him a birthday party. And at 18 years old, we threw him a birthday party that maybe a 6-year-old would have. And at 18 years old, he sat down, and the tears just flowed from his eyes. He couldn't even speak for the longest time because he was a 6-year-old experiencing a birthday party for the first time. And so that just gives you an idea of, how different belief systems and faiths can be. And, it's all about making your own decisions. I would never want to be in a belief system where I can't make my own decisions, to leave, to stay. And that's why I was grateful that at 15, I didn't necessarily leave the Catholic religion, but I don't really identify as Catholic at this point in my life. But yeah, so I would have never thought that you would have done that with the Jehovah's Witnesses, but that was a great story. Thank you for that. I think we should probably put the spiel in at this point.
Well, just one more quick thing. One Saturday after the knock on the door, there was a little note. We stopped by to pray with you, but you were not home. We will come again. But they didn't stop today, so I'm assuming maybe
they gave up. And that stuff makes me uncomfortable anyways. That praying with someone just makes me uncomfortable.
It's like a hug. I don't want to hug it. Right?
I know. There's certain things that I have to do by myself. I just don't
like taking a pee. I'll do it myself. Thank you.
So, anyways, okay, let's get out with our spiel.
You can find the Sandy and Toddcast on any of the platforms that you normally find your podcasts, including YouTube and Twitter. Be sure to like the Sandy and Toddcast on Facebook to keep up on the latest goings-on, including each week's episode. You can also join our group, Stay Weirdos Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast, for more fun. Stay Weirdos is a safe place to share your thoughts, feelings, ideas, and random inappropriate memes without judgment. Sandy and Todd also have a podcast called the Empathecary Podcast. It's for empaths, by empaths. And if you know an empath, you might want to listen too. Find and like the page on Facebook. And finally, if you're thinking about starting your own podcast and just aren't sure where to start, Sandy and Todd can also help with that too. Mindgarden Media is their latest project where the dynamic duo can guide you every step of the way in your podcasting journey. Editing, producing, and consulting is what they do. Like Mindgarden Media on Facebook or email them at themindgardenmedia@gmail.com. And as always, thanks for staying weird.
Well, another interesting podcast.
It was interesting. I liked these questions this week. They were very interesting and they were thought-provoking. Even the vampires and werewolves, we learned something. So thank you guys for all your questions. Again, if you have more questions, I did post in our group, Stay Weirdos, Friends of the Sandy and Toddcast. So you can always throw your questions in there. Message one of us through either the group or the Sandy and Toddcast page. Some people have actually, some of our listeners who aren't necessarily on Facebook, they actually found me through Facebook and messaged me, which is completely fine. I'm Sandy Jean. And you'll know that it's me because you'll see my profile picture with the Sandy and Toddcast logo and a big cover photo of Todd and I at the cemetery last year. So that's how you'll know it's me. Feel free to message me and we can keep it anonymous if you'd like. So we'll keep going with this as long as everybody wants to.
All right. I guess until next week and more Jehovah's Witness stories. Bye.
Bye.